continue our focus on the Whitewater controversy now. In a moment, an interview with White House Communications Director Mark Guerin. But first, an excerpt from a news conference held earlier today by two prominent Republican senators, Bob Dole and Alphonse D'Amato, who, among other things, called for Senate Banking Committee hearings looking into what they say were inappropriate meetings between officials of the Resolution Trust Corporation in the White House about an investigation that may have touched on President and or Mrs. Clinton. Let's take a look at part of that news conference.
We'd just like to hold up a few of the clippings on today's stories. We've only got the local papers. Whitewater cover-up, Treasury Division full White House status, Hubble denies Rose firm, First Lady's role larger than appears. Just a few of the stories that are appearing now on Treasury, Whitewater, bad judgment, so-called independent agency called the RTC. And we're at a loss to know how to get at the facts because the Democrat Congress is apparently going to participate in the cover-up and not try to get to the facts. And we read, at least on the House side, if we can believe Mr. Sapphire, that the word's already been sent out, no hearings under any circumstances. And so in an effort at least to get the Democrat leadership to focus on this in the Senate, Senator D'Amato this morning released a letter signed by 43 Republicans that we will not proceed on the nomination of the FDIC chairman until we have answers to certain questions that were initially raised by Senator D'Amato and Republican members of the Banking Committee. And again, I would just state, had this been Ronald Reagan, as I said on the floor the other day in a sort of fictitious setting, and something would have happened, we had the Treasury consulting with White House political people, or the Attorney General's office consulting with White House political people. There'd have been 15 hearings going on. The press would be demanding everybody's scalp, but we don't hear a lot from the media, and we don't hear anything from the Democratic leadership as far as hearings are concerned. Now, Senator D'Amato has made some headway, and I think I congratulate him for that. I think our bottom line is, if you were an individual trying to get a little meeting with the RTC, any of you or us, and you want to have a little meeting with the RTC officials to sort of get a heads up, you wouldn't get it. There's no doubt people got preferred treatment here. And maybe that's the way it works in this White House. It goes way back to Travelgate, when they called the FBI down and they said later, oh, they just helped us with a press release. And today McCarthy said, we're not going to do it anymore. And when Altman gave the answer to Senator D'Amato, he said, well, I'll recuse myself. Now that you've found out, I'll recuse myself. Now, I don't believe that's the way it's supposed to work. But I'd ask Senator D'Amato to, I know you've raised some questions this morning, maybe you can elaborate.
Well, thank you, Mr. Leader. Let me say that today, I think, was probably the most shocking. Given Mr. Altman's testimony that there was only one meeting and there was only a heads up, and then it takes us a little time to digest exactly who was there. I have to say that at that meeting, we got to say, why was Maggie Williams there? What was she doing there, Lou? This was the same Maggie Williams who with Bernard Nussbaum went through the Whitewater papers after Mr. Foster's death. How is it that we find out in the manner in which we did, and really through the media, that we find out, and it's confirmed by Mr. Altman, that there were two other meetings prior? Is it believable that the General Counsel had these two meetings, that Mr. Altman's assistant, then assistant, now Assistant Secretary Benson, went to both of those meetings? Both of those meetings concerned criminal referrals. How is it the White House counsel would permit that?
Given this development, these announcements call for hearings on the part of Republican senators today and other revelations. We want to go right now to the White House Communications Director, Mark Guerin, who is standing on the front lawn of the White House. Mr. Guerin, let me just start out by asking you about exactly what Senator D'Amato and Senator Dole were saying. How is it that these meetings could have taken place? First of all, a meeting between officials of the Resolution Trust Corporation and the White House, and then we find out in today's Washington Post meetings between Treasury officials in the White House about investigations that potentially involve the President and Mrs. Clinton.
Judy, I think what you've had here at the White House today is the President spoke to this quite clearly and articulately, stating that Obviously, these are meetings that, in hindsight, that shouldn't have occurred, and that's a prime reason why he asked our Chief of Staff, Mac McClarty, to draft a memorandum that's been sent out this afternoon to all members of the White House staff that details and provides guidance to members of the White House staff how to handle appropriate contacts with any federal government agency or department that have matters relating to Whitewater or Madison Guarantee. The President made it quite clear to us, as did our Chief of Staff, that we need to bend over backwards to assure the American people that put trust in this President and Vice President to send us here, that we're doing everything to avoid even, indeed, an appearance of impropriety.
Mr. Guerin, how did the White House change its mind about this? Because last week, Dee Dee Myers, who's the press spokesperson, said that the White House didn't see anything wrong with these briefings that Deputy Treasury Secretary Roger Altman provided for several White House officials. This week, today, the White House, the President, is saying they were a mistake. What persuaded you all that this was a mistake?
Well, we want to avoid, as the President said, even any appearance of impropriety. We're not suggesting anything that our conduct should suggest, but that we have a set of guidelines, some guidance that's been provided to people here in the White House, so that anyone would have any sense that our conduct here is appropriate, that we're observing the public trust, and everything's being conducted here in a manner that we can all be proud of. The President made it very clear that we need to, indeed, as he said, bend over backwards. That's what he wanted to make sure through the Chief of Staff today.
But so just so I have it, just to be clear about this, you're saying the White House is concerned about the appearance, but doesn't believe that there was a problem with these meetings. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're saying that at this point, it's almost the point that the President wanted to stress is that he believed that the White House meeting should not have happened. That the conversations that were outlined today in the press, that the meetings were held, that they should not have happened. What we need to do now is to talk about the step forward, where we need to go from here to make sure the White House staffers have the guidance they need, and indeed that the progress of the investigations that are being conducted, that the independent counsel and his work that proceeds, that we're cooperating with fully, so that the American people can have a sense that we're doing everything that's appropriate, that the trust that the President places in his staff is observed.
Just quickly, Mr. Guerin, there's a wire story that just moved from Reuters saying the Treasury Secretary Lloyd Benson has announced that he's asked the Independent Office of Government Ethics to investigate these contacts between Treasury and White House officials on the failed Arkansas savings and loan. Did you know that this was taking place?
I was not aware that Secretary Benson is taking that step, but I think it's commensurate with, certainly, if that's an accurate press report, with the President's commentary, that we want to assure the American people that we have a set of guidance here, that the conduct here is appropriate, and that we're conducting business the way people would expect us to.
Mr. Guerin, are you satisfied that the White House has been as forthcoming as it should have been? As you know, there is now practically a crescendo of criticism coming down in the news media from the left and from the right on the political spectrum of commentators and other observers saying the White House is making this situation worse by not providing information in a timely manner.
We have done the best job that we can and thought at the relevant times. I think in hindsight, you can revisit these situations. What's, I think, important to people out there across America and your viewers is what actually is happening. I think there's a lot of politics going along. I think there's a lot of punditry going on, and that's fine. That's life here in Washington. But I think people should be assured that we're conducting things appropriately, that we have guidance on how we should contact federal officials, that there's an ongoing investigation done by an independent counsel, and indeed we're cooperating as fully as we possibly can.
All right, Mark Guerin at the White House, we thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll have more of Inside Politics.
The Arkansas real estate deal was simply a bad investment. But the White House now has managed to spread the losses from that real estate deal to the president's political credibility. And tonight, he's trying to head off fresh charges of a cover-up. Same time, he's trying to hold off a new Republican assault on his health care plan. A tough day for the president. We'll begin with NBC's Andrea Mitchell on Whitewater.
The Clinton White House was under fire today, accused of improper meetings between federal regulators and White House staff over the Whitewater case. With critics crying cover-up, the president denied any wrongdoing, but ordered no more contact between the regulators and his aides. So did the Treasury Secretary, who asked ethics officers to look into the meetings. The president was concerned.
As nearly as I can determine, no one has actually done anything wrong or attempted to improperly influence any government action. But I think it would be better if the meetings and conversations hadn't occurred.
The latest revelation, reported in today's Washington Post, White House lawyer Bernard Nussbaum had 2 meetings with Treasury officials over Whitewater. Nussbaum is supposed to be the White House's ethics watchdog, but colleagues believe he botched a series of sensitive issues, including the investigation into the death of his deputy, Vince Foster. NBC News has learned that top officials now want him out and believe he will be replaced. When asked about Nussbaum, Mr. Clinton did not offer a vote of confidence.
What I want the people here to understand is, never mind what the rules are, bend over backwards to avoid the appearance of it.
Republicans were already up in arms because Deputy Treasury Secretary Roger Altman revealed last week that he had given White House officials a heads up about the case, which he supervises as head of the Savings and Loan Bailout. Today's news of even more meetings created a political firestorm.
If the White House has nothing to hide about Whitewater, and that's what they've been saying for months, it's what they said in the campaign, nothing to it, just a little transaction, then why all the meetings? Why all the panic?
The Clinton presidency is very close to a problem that, in fact, could ultimately unravel its entire ability to function.
In fact, the Clinton team has been in almost total meltdown over ethics questions for days. Republicans are holding up confirmation of key appointments until they get answers. A senior White House official told NBC News tonight, "We're innocent in this, but we look terrible." Andrea Mitchell, NBC News at the